Life Audio.
Welcome to the Crosswalk Devotional. We're so glad to have you as a listener. Today's topic is Jesus' great compassion. We'll return after a brief message from our sponsor.
From the Salvation Army, welcome to Heartbeat.
I had recently been praying for and following along with my friends as they walk through the difficult journey of adoption. The amount of paperwork and interviews is staggering. As they were planning on adopting a baby, they had a lot of conversations about how they would discuss the adoption with their child once he was old enough. This is an incredibly emotional thing to discuss. However, the most beautiful thing to focus on is not that anyone gave him away, but that two other people chose him, just like our Heavenly Father has chosen us. Ephesians chapter 1 says, "For he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. In love, he predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ." You are no accident.
For more episodes of Heartbeat, visit salvationarmyradio.org.
Miracles are everywhere.
Let our adventure begin!
Discover PureFlix, your premium streaming service where faith and family values come home.
Ready to have some fun?
The most exclusive selection of quality, wholesome movies and series that will uplift your spirit.
A man can argue whether God exists, but when he looks at his daughters, he knows.
With new arrivals every week.
Unbelievable.
Save big and enjoy the possibilities like invitations to exclusive theatrical screenings.
I see it, so I believe it.
Find out more by joining today at pureflix.com.
Jesus' Great Compassion by Emma Danzey. Matthew 14:12-16 says, John's disciples came and took his body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew. Have you ever gotten really difficult news and just needed a minute alone? Jesus had been told by his closest friends that his cousin John the Baptist had been killed. This was a rough day in the life of Christ. His family member, friend, and front-runner had been beheaded in prison for his ministry. Although this did not come as a surprise to Jesus, he knew this day would come. What we read here reveals to us a lot about Christ's heart and his perfect deity and humanity. We see such authentic humanity in that Jesus was mourning his cousin. He stopped what he was doing and began to go to a place of solitude to grieve this loss. As he got onto a boat, he landed at the shoreline only to find a large crowd. What would the King of Heaven do? He just lost a loved one, but the people in front of him needed him greatly. This is where we see his perfect deity. He had compassion on them and healed their sick. Right then, when Jesus saw the crowd, it says that he had compassion on them. In the moment of needing compassion and comfort himself, we see Jesus have compassion upon others. This is not humanly normal. This is not a natural response. He could have easily claimed exhaustion, turned his boat in a different direction, or ignored them. But no, we see Jesus have compassion on them and heal their sick. They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. The disciples came to Jesus in the evening and tried to get him to get away from the people. They told him that it was getting late, they told him to send the crowds away so that they could buy food. Perhaps they had genuine worry and concern for Jesus and wanted him to have space to weep and grieve. Maybe they themselves are wanting a break. They could have also just been selfishly tired and wanting some alone time. Whatever their reasoning, it was not good enough for Christ to overlook the need of the people to eat. Jesus responded that the people did not need to go away, that the disciples needed to give them something to eat. Jesus refines us in this way as well. There are times when it would be much easier to ignore the needs of others in front of us, but he calls us to act and to show his love to them. Following this comment, Jesus asked his disciples what they had to offer. There were 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Jesus directed the people where to sit, blessed the food, and miraculously there was enough to feed everyone there, including 12 baskets left over for each of the disciples. Following Jesus is not convenient, comfortable, or always easy, but there is great reward and provision when we say yes to him. Intersecting faith and life. How do you feel comforted knowing that Jesus had such a heart for his cousin John the Baptist? What speaks to you personally about how Jesus had compassion on the crowd in the midst of his own personal grief? How do you see Christ's perfect deity in the way he pressed into the need of the 5,000 over his own? Further reading: Mark 6:30 through 44, Luke 9:10 through 17, and John 6:1 through 15.
The Crosswalk Devotional is a production of Life Audio and Salem Media. If you liked what you heard today, please take a second to rate and review this podcast in your favorite podcast app so that more listeners like you can find the show. For more faith-filled, inspirational podcasts, visit us at lifeaudio.com.
Miracles are everywhere.
Let our adventure begin!
Discover PureFlix, your premium streaming service where faith and family values come home.
Ready to have some fun?
The most exclusive selection of quality, wholesome movies and series that will uplift your spirit.
A man can argue whether God exists, but when he looks at his daughters, he knows.
With new arrivals every week.
Unbelievable.
Save big and enjoy the possibilities, like invitations to exclusive theatrical screenings.
I see it, so I believe it.
Find out more by joining today at pureflix.com.
It's time for Medicaid open enrollment in Delaware. From Wilmington to Bethany Beach, connections run deep in the first state, and AmeriHealth Caritas Delaware is dedicated to connecting you to care. To learn more, visit AmeriHealthCaritasDE.com.